This sun. Ladies and gentlemen, may we invite you to have your seats, please?
Invite you before, so I don't have to move again. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the European Office of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung for joining us at our today's roundtable discussion on how to make the EU electricity market future-proof. This event has been co-organized with our partner EPICO, and I would like to thank Bernd Weber and his colleagues in Williams and Brussels for the excellent cooperation that has enabled us to organize this discussion in a hybrid format today, and we look forward to continuing our valued cooperation. Likewise, many thanks to our distinguished speakers and our moderator, as well as to you, our participants here or digitally connected with us. It's great that you took the time to be here today and to talk about this issue that has been strongly debated among member states before the Commission released its proposal on March 16. Therefore, we are looking forward to hear an overview on the current state of play by the European Commission, followed by the perspective on the reform of our panelists, and discuss developments at the co-legislator level. This discussion aims to address the various measures that could potentially be implemented, reflect on current challenges, and outline possible solutions for the future of electricity market design. For us as Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung in particular, this issue of innovation and technology and their impact on the market economy plays a major role. To promote innovation, achieve climate neutrality, and remain competitive in the long term, Europe needs a market and innovation-oriented climate and energy policy. Therefore, it is important to us to give different stakeholders a voice and to bring them into exchange with legislators. And we are very pleased that we have succeeded in doing this in this hybrid format today, and I'm eager to hear the assessments of our audience. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Klaus-Dieter, who will moderate today's discussion. Many thanks again to our panelists and to all of you present here today in our office. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And also from my side, warm welcome. I have to say, people joining us online will only hear me, but not see me, because I'm out of the scope of the camera, but here in you can see and hear me. It's a great pleasure moderating this very interesting panel discussion. I think we are discussing today maybe the hottest issue in town here in Brussels, and also with a provocative title, how to make the EU electricity market future-proof. This future-proof came up already in the discussions earlier during the energy crisis situation, where, including the Commission's President, von der Leyen, they thought that the electricity market design would not be fit for purpose of the future. But not only because of the energy crisis, we are asking this question, but also because we have to accelerate the deployment of renewable electricity energies. And this, of course, it's intermittent energy, and therefore the question of robust and resilient market design for the electricity market is one of the most important issues. And I'm very, very happy to have very competent panelists here. One is still missing, but we are confident she is coming now. And I'm very happy to discuss. I will come back to that in a moment. Before that, some housekeeping rules. You are here very much invited to take an active part in this discussion. We will start with some statements that I will introduce in a second. And then I hope that we can open the discussion with you as participants in person. And also now I'm addressing myself to those who are joining us online. You also can participate, ask your question, either in the question and answer function or also in the chat. I will have a close look at those and I will bring them up when they're coming in. And that's for the moment all. And I'm still waiting that our fourth panelist is coming. She is. Before then I introduce the panel of today, maybe how do I see our discussions today? As I said, I would like to start with Alexandra to give us a short overview of the Commission proposal. The Commission proposal that you have on the revision of the market design that you have all seen, which if you look from the outset to that proposal, is, in my view at least, a moderate and balanced proposal. Because as you remember, there were initial discussions which also went much, much further than what the Commission has proposed, especially looking at the future of the marginal list pricing system, which is the foundation of the current electricity market and has shown in the past that it delivers the results that we all expected from it. And I must say I was positively surprised, not surprised, but I took it as a positive element from the Commission's proposal that this issue was not put in a proposal that was drafted in record time, I must say. So, therefore, I think, as I said, I think the Commission proposal is, in this sense, moderate. You have a lot of interesting parts in this proposal. Alexander will tell us more. Again, consumer protection is one of the issues. Also, how to make sure that the advantages of the deployment of renewables are also at the end getting to the consumer price-wise. You have the liquidity of the electricity as an issue. You have, of course, also the support of renewable generation. Also, flexibility is back as one of the issues, and also how to replace the fossil-based flexibility that we have currently in the system, how to replace that by renewable flexibility instruments, notably also demand-side response. And then also, of course, providing households with additional guarantees and benefits, especially also protecting them against this high price peaks. So Alexander will tell us a bit more, and then we go throughout. And now I also welcome the member of the European Parliament, Maria da Carvalho. Maria, you could also already take your place. You stay there. Okay. And we are therefore all here, and then let's start with Alexandra giving us an overview of the or a summary of the key issues of the Commission proposal. And I would also be interested, as I have said, what were the thinking behind the Commission that you have reduced the scope as you did, and not going into the very, very touchy issue of the marginal pricing system. Maybe you can also tell us what was the thinking behind it.
Of course, with pleasure. First of all, Ben, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here and to discuss this very relevant and timely topic. So I'm here to explain a bit what is behind our proposal, what are the main elements, but also to answer some questions and discuss with other panelists some more sensitive topics. Let me start with what was our starting point. And so what already Klaus-Dieter explained some months ago, not even a year ago, when we were, exactly, it was actually during last summer when the crisis and really exploded, the prices were record high, and we heard many voices of criticism toward the current electricity market design. So some stakeholders, some member states started to question the fundamentals of the current design and saying that the design doesn't work, that it needs to be changed, needs to be completely overhauled. So that was our starting point. And then we were asked to come up with a proposal in a record time, including streamlined impact assessment. So we also launched a public consultation. And already at that stage, the feedback that we received from all the stakeholders, member states, was actually surprisingly positive as regards the existing market design. So there were actually, it turned out that there was very little support for a complete change, revolution of the current market design. And this is also what we have seen, and what was also shown in the ESA report that was published last year, that the market design actually works well and it delivers to consumers what it was supposed to deliver. So affordable prices, except for the crisis, that I will go back to this point later, but security of supply, and it also delivers on the decarbonization objectives. So what we saw that as such, the market works, but the recent crisis also demonstrated that there are some shortcomings, that volatile fossil fuels have a huge impact on short-term markets, and then this exposes consumers, including not only households, but also companies, industry, to extremely high prices. And then, so with the conclusions of the ESA report, our observations and the feedback from the public consultation and also discussions with member states, we actually what we decided to propose was a targeted improvement to the electricity market design, because all indications show that actually the market design works well, so there is no need for a complete revolution. So the main objective behind our reform is to address these shortcomings. So basically to protect better consumers against volatile prices on the short-term markets. And also what Klaus-Dieter also mentioned is to bring benefits of the decarbonization and lower cost renewables directly to consumers, so they can really see the benefits of decarbonization on their bills. Mid-March, we adopted our proposal, which is now already being negotiated in the Council, which is already starting being negotiated in the Parliament. So it actually covers 4 main elements. And the first one, as I said, it's to improve how long-term markets work. Because we saw that there was too much focus on the short-term markets, and this actually exposed consumers. So we really thought that it's useful to actually improve longer-term markets. And this will be done by 3 main reforms. So improving how and facilitating, encouraging the PPAs market, so privately concluded contracts, then encouraging the use of 2 CFDs, and this actually serves a dual purpose. On one hand, it protects consumers against price spikes, but also it stabilizes revenues for those producers. But just to clarify, because there's a very common misunderstanding, these two ACFDs will be used only in for certain technologies and only if a member state decides to grant public support. And here, speaking about state support, we talk about operating aid, not investment aid, for example. And then the third element related to long-term markets is improving how forward electricity markets work. Because today, what we see is that these markets lack liquidity, and they will become even more important looking forward when we actually accelerate the renewables rollout. The second pillar of our reform is to make the current market design future-proof. So what Klaus-Dieter mentioned in his introduction. So how to phase out more flexible fossil fuel-based generation and replace it with other fossil-free solutions such as demand response or energy storage. And how to facilitate better integrating of renewables. And this can be done by, for example, bringing the gate closure closer to real time, or, for example, by improving the rollout of measuring devices. And then the third pillar, which is actually extremely important, is to all measures aim to improve consumer protection and enhancing the empowerment. Because of course we have this triangle of three objectives when we speak about electricity markets. And in the previous reform, the focus was really on decarbonization sustainability. But today, I think the focus is more on consumer protection because they really suffered during the recent crisis. So these are the three main elements. There's the fourth one related to market transparency. It's the reform of REMIT. But I think that today we'll focus rather on the amendments that we proposed in to electricity regulation and to electricity directive. But also the amendments to the REMIT regulation are very relevant, and they are actually complementary to the main reform, and they should be actually regarded as one package. So overall, like these three elements plus REMIT changes to the REMIT regulation, they should actually lead to better protection of consumers on the one hand, especially against future price shocks. They should also incentivize further investments in renewables, but also flexible solutions. And this is really essential for the future of our decarbonization and achieving zero net neutrality targets by 2050. And then I think I'm happy to answer all the questions.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And I forgot to mention that you are the policy officer for the internal energy market in PGN.
Yes.
Now I invite Maria Ragazza-Carvalho. Maria is a member of the European Parliament. She is also a member of the EPICO committee and representing there also the EPP group. And she has been appointed shadow rapporteur, if I'm not mistaken, for the electricity market design proposal. I know that you cannot speak neither for the Parliament nor for the group nor for anybody at the moment because the work is just starting. But it still is very interesting for us to hear from you. How do you assess the Commission's proposal on the electricity market design? Maria,
thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I apologize for being a bit late because there was a fire alarm this morning, an exercise in the Parliament to put us out during some time, didn't allow us in, so it was a bit disturbed my timetable, so my apologies. And so, as you have said, the EPP has decided to look at this two reports as a package, and this is the reason that has appointed the same rapporteur foreshadowing the electricity market design and for rapporteur in remit. And so I will fulfill that role. And we are in the early stage of the discussion. Actually, there was not yet a proper discussion inside the whole group of EPP, and not even in ITRE. We had preliminary. We had the presentations by the commission and question time with the members, but not yet the presentation of the reports. So we don't have the reports yet, and neither the amendments. We have a tight schedule because we want to finalize this year or the latest in January next year. So the reports will be presented in May, both reports and amendments. One is voted in July, the EMD is going to be voted in July, and the remit will be voted early September. And we hope to go as soon as the administrative procedures allow to go to September, or at least the latest in October, to plenary, so that we can start immediate negotiations. And after we will see if we can be able to finalize the negotiations in December or in January. That are the plans. So my impressions on the electricity market design, and with the colleagues, mainly the colleagues on ITRE from DPP, we are in the general agreement with the proposal. We agree that the proposal addresses important points. One of the points that for us is important is that the proposal places the consumers at the center, and introduces a big package of the proposal, how to involve the consumers in the electricity market and how to protect the consumers and like that. And also the security of supply is there, and the market-oriented signals. So this is a proposal that is oriented to the market. So all principles that we defend. What is our main concern is that is in the implementation. So some of these ideas are very interesting ideas, but they were done without the proper impact assessment. And we also in the European Parliament are in the first track process, so also not having a lot of time for requiring studies and replacing in some way the impact assessment. So, and we need to avoid taking risks. So, for example, the consumers, the proposal of the consumers, we really need to see if how the implementation can be done without being too complex, and how they can be effective in practice. So this is our overall concern about the proposal. So some more detailed topics on the consumers. We are quite happy that the proposal has found ways to engage the consumers in the market. The fact that the consumers can have flexible contracts, dedicated meters and meters, that there is consumer protection through fixed price contracts. However, we are aware that part of this was already in the previous package, and there is very few implementation by the member states. So it's something that we need to be aware that the member states take long time to implement the measures that are approved. The second point that we like is that there is a long-term perspective. However, we need to design it very carefully. As it was said, this is done by namely the CFDs, and the questions that why these technologies, not other technologies, how is the design of the CFDs, if we keep some European rules, but we don't lose the overall European perspective, could be very important. So I suppose that in the amendments we will look a little bit more in detail on the design of the CFDs. There is one point that we think that needs to be carefully looked at, because there is a lot of criticism from a lot of stakeholders, is the virtual hubs. We think that is quite interesting from the academic point of view. I don't know in practice if we say from the stakeholders, we listen from the stakeholders that is too complex for them. So it's something that you really need, and we have the request to get rid of complexity that is not absolutely necessary. Something that some of the stakeholders say, proposal is very good, just go through it, see what are the complexity that is not really essential and get rid of it. Some stakeholders tell us that. And they give the example of the virtual hub. So it's something that we really need to look at it. There is a pilot going on, we need to analyze the better how it's the results. One point that I would like to see more developed is a clear framework for investments in grids, transmission and distribution. This touched, but we could go stronger on that. Permitting procedures that is already in red, but can also be reinforced here. So I know that is not exactly the most adequate regulation to include that, but to mention that we need to have some sort of model, European model for the investment in grids could be important, because with the increase on electrification, we really have an enhanced investment in grids. The other point that I think that is the fifth point is we need to increase the storage for both for market and price optimization. And there we need to see if there are alternative ways, or if it's linked with the mechanisms for adequacy, the capacity mechanisms. And this is the part that the Commission didn't touch. Do we need to touch that? There is different opinions on this. We understand why the Commission didn't open. It's difficult to close if we open and we want to close it. So we really need to see what we have in the capacity mechanisms. If it's working, probably we should leave it, as it is difficult to find an agreement, or if there is alternative ways that we can increase the storage. And this is my main points that I would like to on the electricity market. I just want to say for the remit is it had a lot of what I usually call housekeeping, that is things that were already happening during these years, and other regulations they are putting in remit. And there is one point for political discussion, is that if we transfer some of the competence that are national to the European level, and so reinforce the power of asset, that will be, I tend to be of that opinion, but it's something that we need to discuss, is quite political, to have more Europe in the internal energy market. I think so, and I will try to push it. So this is my first comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yeah, and I'm sure that you have raised some very interesting points, and we will come back to them in our discussion. Now, I would like to introduce Sonja Troik. Sonja is the Secretary General of ENER, well known in Brussels. Sonja, what is your take on the Commission's proposal on the new electricity?
Thank you, Klaus-Dieter, and thank you to the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung for inviting me. I'd also like to extend my congratulations to Ms. Carvalho for her appointment as lead rapporteur for REMIT and also shadow rapporteur for the electricity market design regulation. Very important regulations for us across Europe. ENER, as you know, represents 39 TSOs, 2 observers, one is from Ukraine and one is from Turkey. We are tasked with, under law, to develop the network codes and methodologies to coordinate market integration projects. And we are fundamentally tasked with ensuring transparency through the through REMIT and through our transparency platform, which will I come back to. So fundamentally, ENER is here to support the objectives of achieving the electricity market design, the electricity integration, and we are very supportive of the Commission's proposals and, of course, with regard to the work of the Parliament now to assess the designs. We also want to, congratulate also Commission for moving very fast in a very difficult process. It was a very challenging year last year to deal with both Ukraine and all of the aspects around security of supply, but also to address all of the concerns of member states towards the prices that we're seeing. So we do recognize how fast things have moved, but also the pragmatism that's come through the proposals as well. So there's a listening of stakeholders to the proposals, and in terms of not, providing, sort of a proposal that essentially the market and the industry does not feel is fair and appropriate. We welcome very much the objective to avoid a distortion of the short-term markets, to preserve the market principles that have been laid down in the internal energy market regulations. We support a stronger and balanced framework for market integrity and transparency. We, of course, welcome the provisions in regard to demand response and consumer protection. I think everybody would accept that all the regulations these past 10, 15 years have, of course, mentioned and pushed consumer there, but now it's even more stronger than ever, and for very good reason. That when you look at end to end, have we taken care of the consumer? We couldn't say yes to that all these years. We could say that we tried, or that we have provisions that intend to go that direction. Now we need to be more robust and stronger on the consumer, but also on demand response. What you and I do every day with our electricity and our energy usage, we need to be even more committed, from a European perspective. But also, as you do mention, Ms. Carvalho, the long-term investment signals and the importance of achieving carbon neutrality in how deployment works. So a lot more commitment on the investment side. So we do acknowledge very much the fast-paced decision-making that's going on now to reform. Some people like to call it reform of the design. Some people like to call it, an enhancement of the design. All the philosophies are there, but certainly in making sure that we preserve the integrity is, I think, a fundamental principle that everyone shares, and that is good. And of course, we support the process based on our own expertise here in the industry. Having developed the network codes over 10, 15 years now, we are currently working on the demand side network code, and we have just finished the cybersecurity network code. We work in tandem with the EU DSO entity and all stakeholders to develop the right appropriate regulations for Europe in this regard. In terms of the specifics of the market design, we welcome the predator protection, as I said, about European consumers. We welcome the preservation of liquid, well-functioning liquid and short-term markets. We do need to ensure efficient use of generation, full stop, and also the flexibility that that generation gives you. These are important signals that have to be there laid out in the market design. And these need to incentivize energy savings for the consumer. So again, every time we say why we do something, it's the value that it brings to the consumer has to be highlighted. Transparency is really essential here for this market design. Why? Well, it's a very fast-paced market, right? It's a renewables-based market. It's changing in terms of efficiency and liquidity. It's got very dynamic short-term signals. It needs member states are taking very long-term perspective on decarbonization and their portfolios. So it needs to have transparency about what is going on. Everyone needs to be aware. And I even remember when the war started last year, you know, we even said a lot to stakeholders, to Commission, we need to publish what we're doing here, because we were taking decisions so fast to connect in Ukraine, but also to bring trade across between Ukraine and Europe. We need to be clear, you know, even when we're taking very fast decisions and they're the right ones, and we have support, we still need to communicate. And so that has to be very much a fundamental aspect of this market design and this market going forward. N3 is responsible for the transparency platform. It is a central IT system, let's call it, providing data every day for every time period on generation, load, transmission, and all the balancing. So I encourage you all to use it. In fact, since 2015, there has been an enormous use of the platform. It now has 50,000 users. Okay, and during the last 12 months, the number of users every day has increased by 400. It's a significant platform in its use. We see lots of industries that maybe never had the interest in the data and the energy now, because their own business model is affected by energy. And so they want access to the data, they want to use it for their own forecasting. Back to flexibility needs, and of course, we really do want to, as TSOs, encourage the maximum use of the resources connected to the system. So therefore, if you have enough flexibility inherent in your resource, if it's generation or supply, we want to see it. We want to encourage it. We want it remunerated. And of course, we ourselves are developing the flexibility need assessment. We recognize that that is necessary in our own vision that we published last year. And we want, of course, to ensure as TSOs that there is appropriate investment in the transmission system. We are regulated businesses, so we are there to ensure the consumer is also considered and protected. But we also want to foster innovation. So we do call for regulatory, let's call it not redesign, but regulatory creativity in how investment is taken in the transmission and distribution systems, fostering innovation, but also fostering flexibility. And in terms of network investment, we do thank also Commission for recognizing the importance of both capital and operating costs as well in terms of that investment decision. We agree also with the lead rapporteur that there is impact assessments missing, but of course we recognize how fast the Commission has moved. So there are some important aspects that do need to be further considered before they become law. In terms of CRMs, in terms of capacity remuneration mechanisms, we're very pragmatic, because if you need it, you need it, right? So the point is, given the last 12 months, if a member state says I need to clearly incentivize, certain generation in order to decarbonize my system, then that is what it takes. We do understand that Commission wants to give guidance and support to how CRM should be used, and therefore that is something that could be further developed in the further stages of the work. But important to ensure when you decarbonize your electricity system or your power system, you do need to recognize that the changes of generation in any system are not so easy to manage, and therefore you have to ensure that there is a sound investment model, a sound generation model. And if that requires stability for those generators, and I come from Ireland, and overnight, or very quickly, 2 key gas units just went out of business or stopped, even though there's a market there, even though there's money to be made, they just stopped. Okay, so what does the state do there? You know, because the TSO has no generation and the consumer possibly has a blackout. So virtual hubs, I thank also the comments made on virtual hubs. Again, it's a sort of a novel idea, nothing wrong with novel ideas, but does need to be considered in implementation. On congestion income, we do want a balanced view on the use of congestion income so that we are not subsidizing particular parts of certain projects and not others. So again, to be careful there. On the gate closure times, again, we would like to maybe assess, the consequences of moving, and also to be careful about putting an actual number within the law and having a little bit more flexibility. We welcome further discussion with Ms. Carvalho with regard to remit. And we would like to look at a balanced approach with regards to, developing new obligations here, but we're very open to discussing them further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And now our last speaker, the only man on the panel, I hope you have realized that, is the CEO of EPICO, Innovation. EPICO is located since 2.5 years in Berlin, and since last year also here in Brussels, already very active, also at the European level. EPICO has submitted its own paper on the electricity market design, and we're happy also, or EPICO is happy to work also on the basis of the Commission proposal. And EPICO in Berlin is also member of the platform for the electricity market design of future. So, Bernd, we would like to hear from you. What do you think about the Commission proposal?
Yeah, thank you very much, Klaus-Dieter. I think that the challenge on both levels for the German debate and also for the European debate is to strengthen the European internal energy market rather than undermining it. And this means to make it future-proof as well. And this also means, and it was said before, to bring the benefits of renewables, of lower costs of renewables to the consumers. And when I say consumers, I mean households, but I also mean industrial consumers. Since for me, the electricity market design is an essential part also of the industrial strategy at the end of the day, and will be decisive on the question what electricity prices will be there for the companies as well, and if there will be sufficient green energy ideally available, and obviously also the question of security supply is very important in this regard. Now, I think that the Commission's approach to this, which is more an evolutionary than a revolutionary approach, is the right way to go. I think that abolishing the marginal pricing would have been a mistake. Right, the contrary, I think we need it actually more than ever. The more renewable the energy system will be, in order to make sure that we have a market-based way of financing renewable energy, which with capex-driven investment. We will also need it for integration of this renewable build out into the system. So this, and for efficiency, and this is really important. At the same time, we also need to shield the consumers from the fossil price hikes. And long-term contracts here are indeed the right solution in our view. And here you can go two ways, right? You can do PPAs or you can do double-sided CFDs. And I would argue that PPAs are the preferable option because they are market-based. They don't need any subsidies, and they provide hedging opportunities. And I think that's important because we come to a stage where renewable energy is more and more competitive with regard to fossil generation. So this would be the right way to go. At the same time, we do see that investors need some revenue stability, and here PPAs provide for bankability and are exactly the bridge that we need. Having said that, I do think that double-sided PPAs also part of the puzzle, part of the solution. They make the build-out of renewables more foreseeable. They also might lead to revenues for the state in times of high prices. So for me, the question on the double-sided CFDs is not so much whether it is an option, it definitely will be an option, but whether it can and should be used to re-regulate national and electricity markets. And I think this is the key question when it comes to double-sided CFDs. And I think to answer this question, we need further clarification on 3 points, which I would like to outline very briefly. First one is, what's the interrelation between double-sided CFDs and PPAs? Or in other words, why should anybody go for a PPA if you can get risk-secure CFD? So that's a question we definitely need to find an answer to, in order to avoid also that the double-sided CFDs would really hamper the market-based renewable build-out and PPAs. So this is one question. The other point where I think we need clarification is what kind of CFDs or double-sided CFDs we are talking about exactly. Because I do see the threat that if we don't design this well, we have cannibalization, but also the double-sided CFDs might take us back to something that I thought we've already overcome, which is the produce and forget paradigm. So we really need to make sure that we have incentives for designing plants, for operating plants in a system-friendly way. And this should be enshrined when we discuss the role of double-sided CFDs. My third question, or the third point where I think we need clarification, is the question whether we really want double-sided CFDs to be the only direct support mechanism. And I raised this question coming from Germany, where we have a one-sided market premium covering 62% of our renewable capacity currently. So basically, we have auctions for the floor price. We don't have a ceiling price, so to say. And when you compare that to CFDs, and we did this in a study last year, we see that this one-sided market premium in Germany actually offers more incentives for risk-taking, deeper market integration incentives, and an easier transition. That's my main point, towards PPAs. It prepares the actors for the markets. And so the question here is whether we really want to limit our options here, since we see that in some countries, in some member states, we have other support mechanisms, and I would argue that in Germany they are actually functioning. Now, when it comes to flexibility, I echo a lot of what has already been said. And in order not to be repetitive, I would say the part of the solution is already there when it comes to flexibility, and it's in the European energy package. So we need to implement the new clean energy package in the member states. It is a milestone for demand-side flexibility. It would enable households and businesses to save money. It enables for aggregation and integration of flexibility in all markets. So we should implement it. And this would also help us to ensure the tariffs are cost-reflective and do not penalize energy storage. So part of the solution is already there. What can we do beyond this? And I think here we should really think of how to integrate all decentralized units to participate in the market, be it on the demand side or be it on the supply side. And here we have enormous flexibility potential at our hand that so far remained rather untapped. And when you look at this potential, you find that we also have a digital gap to bridge here. Because we lack digital proof of identity. And this is one of the most pressing issues when it comes to digitalization as a whole, but it also is true for the electricity market. And here we need we need a decentralized solution. Now, the last juicy question of capacity mechanisms. I'm also very pragmatic about that. I think we need them. I think we already had a discussion about capacity mechanisms almost 10 years ago. Quite vivid discussion back then. I remember it. I think the situation has changed a little bit. We don't have the situation of overcapacity anymore. We are accelerating the transformation, yeah, we need investment in capacity that we can regulate in a very uncertain market environment. This is why I think we need capacity markets or mechanisms, also because I think that in an energy-only market, where we have just peaking plants just running for a few hours, we would need to see very high prices in certain hours. And I'm not sure if this is politically feasible also in the light of the crisis that we have seen. Now, when you look at the different capacity mechanisms that we find in Europe, you see that we have experiences with centralized ones and decentralized ones. I think we need to make sure, and I think here's the Commission right to outline this. I think this can even be more explicit, that we should make sure that we integrate to the best extent the decentralized flexibilities and storages, which in my view would benefit rather decentralized capacity mechanism. But in any way, I think we need it, and it will be part of the puzzle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I can say from the 4 interventions or statements, a lot of food for discussion. I would suggest that we structure the discussion so that we are not jumping from one issue to the other. I would like to start our discussion on CFDs and PPAs. Then I would like also to touch a bit on the flexibility, maybe also a bit on digitalization, capacity mechanism, and then finally on the consumer. But I think there I heard it's a lot of large agreement that what is, as Maria has said, there was already the big push to put the consumer into the center of the energy transition. And now what the Commission has proposed, it's improving it, it's complementing it. But let us start, and I invite you also, if you have questions to one of these issues, please raise your hand, and then please tell us where you are coming from, and then you can ask your question. I would like to start with the CFDs and PPAs, because what I took, especially from Bernd's question, and also what Maria said, that you want to give a very particular look at the European framing of the CFDs. In my view, that is the critical question there. Bernd has spoken about the cannibalization, that if the CFDs are badly designed for the PPAs, we need both. And therefore, my question is, the Commission proposal is not clear, Alexandra, in all points. You can interpret it in a good sense or a bad sense, and then you have, of course, still the trialogue to come, and nobody knows what comes out of that. My question is, where do you see the most dangerous pitfalls for the design of the CFDs? Is it the possible application of existing assets? Is it that the flexibility that might be given to the member states is so large that at the end of the day, through these instruments, you are coming to fragmentation of the internal market? So what is your take on this? Is it the solution, as Maria has already said, we need some safeguards, more clear safeguards as in the Commission proposal, to tell the member states what is possible under CFDs and what is not possible, so that we can have also PPAs to be developed as Bernd has said. Just maybe a short person. And then I take on CFDs and PPAs questions from you.
Okay, maybe let's start with the structure of our proposal, because as you said, both instruments of PPAs, CFDs are needed, and they are actually complementary. And if you read our proposal, PPAs come first. So, and this is also the logic behind our reform, that we really want to incentivize market-driven solutions such as PPAs, but not only the other purely merchant projects that are also appearing on the market. And CFDs come only as the second best solution. And this only comes if member states decide to support such projects. So if, for example, there are not enough merchant projects appearing on the market, and we know that now with the new RES target, the RES investments will require some support. That there will be many projects that will need to materialize. And another point is that today, of course, we see very high prices on the market. But according to our predictions, this will not be always the case, and most likely the prices will decrease and they will be very low in the years to come. So, of course, today we are facing high prices, but so that are very beneficial to RES investors. But in some years, the situation might change, and then they will actually struggle with very low market revenues. That's why we are actually proposing two-way CFDs. So on one hand, producers will be certain of a stable revenue, but at the same time, consumers will be protected in the cases of extremely high electricity prices, and then member states could use this extra revenues to support consumers. And this is actually what we also seen in the recent crisis. That I mean, sometimes we hear a criticism that two-way CFDs is a novel solution. It is not. Already 1/3 of member states use them. So they are already tested. They are applied. This is like a no regret option. Also because so member states who actually had two-way CFDs already in place during the recent crisis, they had more resources to support consumers. And also that what we are proposing now is not to have mandatory two-way CFDs for all technologies full stop, but this is actually only for certain technologies that have no maintenance cost or very low maintenance cost. So also that our proposal should not, I mean, member states on one hand can go further and use two-way CFDs also to other technologies, but if they don't wish so, it shouldn't, for example, hamper any innovation and investments in other technologies, because that's technology that actually they have a certain cost, and so the having their revenues could cause some issues in case of high prices. So what we are proposing is some common denominator, but it's really like the minimum common denominator. And in our proposal, we also included some safeguards. So it is true that perhaps this safeguards or design principles could be further developed, but given the very limited time we had, we only included some minimum requirements. So the environmental member states should ensure that the functioning of the market is preserved, so that the market stays competitive, liquid, that the producers respond to signals, market signals, but also consumers respond to price signals. So this is already in our proposal, and I agree, and now I turn to co-legislators, that perhaps these actually principles could be further fleshed out. But indeed, at the same time, we didn't want to be too prescriptive, because there are many forms of contracts for difference. We didn't want to kill innovation also on the market for contracts for difference. These contracts are also changing; they are evolving. So we wanted to leave some leave it relatively open, both to member states, but also to producers, so they can shape this contract as they need, as they see it useful for them. And last point, we still have in place a stated regime. So all those support schemes under 280, they will require stated clearance. So there are many design principles that are already enshrined in stated guidelines. So we didn't see a need to repeat these requirements that are already in our legislation. So also because, for example, there are some principles in the state aid guidelines that, for example, if they were included in our proposal, that perhaps they could be modified, diluted during the co-legislation process. So this was the risk that we saw, and we prefer to to stay on a more cautious side, and so the requirements that we or design principles that we are included in the proposal are quite high level, but they are there, and they are paired with the requirements that are in the stated rules.
Alexander, very short question and short answer if possible. Why is it the one and only solution? Why is it that it's this the new normal, these CFDs? Why have you said it's only two-way CFDs that you can use for future support?
Yes, but for future support, first of all, if there's a support from member states, this is not always the case. This is, let's say, last resort solution. And only for operating aid. So member states stay free to, for example, grant investment aid to support such projects. But if indeed it's operating aid and coming with state support, then indeed it should be under CFDs. We saw that this was probably the most efficient way to support certain technologies that are listed in our proposal.
You heard that the Germans are already on a different view. But yeah, you have also raised the issue with the European framework that needs to be reinforced by CFDs. But what do you think when you listen to Alexander?
So we see that the risks of fragmentation otherwise. And I was going to ask, what is exactly the criteria for the choice of these technologies that you have listed and not others? And I also would like to ask, how do you see in the present proposal, how do you incentivize the use of the more innovative technologies that are not included in your list?
So maybe just quickly,
Yes, of course.
So it's actually this time, everyone wants to be on the list. But this time, in case of our proposal, it's actually not a good thing to be on the list of technologies. Because only these 5 listed technologies, they need to be subject to ACFDs. Others, they can have a completely different support structure. And they don't need, they can, for example, have a market premium or any. So that's why we don't kill innovation. If they are, for example, more innovative technologies, they are not subject to the ACFDs. So we consider that these technologies that are on the list are already quite mature. First of all, second, they have very low operating costs. So basically, on one hand, to ensure that they have minimum revenues, because in case in future prices go down, but at the same time we avoid windfall profits, what we saw in the past months.
Only the others can have.
Exactly. And we hear many voices. Oh, why, for example, biomass is not on the list? Yes. No, because they have variable input cost. Yeah.
So it's otherwise a good.
Exactly.
To be in the list.
Exactly. So there's a race to be.
Not to be in the list, should be the list.
Exactly. So this should be actually, I think, explained to the producers, and this is a very common misconception, and one must be on the list, not this time.
Any other comment?
No, actually, there is some, as I said, the dangers of fragmentation and the dangers of cannibalization of the PPAs, as I think you have said. But we need to make sure that the PPAs really comes us, and CFDs will be the second best solution. So we need to look at the proposal to make sure that in practical terms.
Yes.
Maybe just a quick reaction. I think a lot of the principles that both Commission and Ms. Carvalho have said that we would support. We do think it's important that the CFDs remain voluntary and the price should be set competitively. Maybe these are all accepted principles, but it's important that they're not regulated instruments. Market parties should believe that there is a market force here rather than a regulatory one, and that's important for the the integrity of this market that we support. PPAs, of course, should be further encouraged, but they must also look at what they are, the value they bring. And back to the point about the consumer, is it a large consumer that you're trying to support, or is it your medium and small consumer? So really, can member states have the flexibility to support their broad consumer base and how they're targeting those aspects? And then just with regards to capability, the CFT should also be clever enough not to be just focusing on, provision of energy or, but also the capability. So again, back as a TSO to thinking of the system needing certain supports now with a flexible regime, we need to think about what capabilities. So again, very much clever thinking in the design of the CFDs will be useful to us. Thank you.
And I think you can be very satisfied with the intervention so far, but I don't know whether you want to add something.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with the intervention, of course, thank you. I would maybe add 2 points. So I echo what Sonia has just said, and I'm really happy to hear the PPAs are the go-to option, so to say. I think they are not available to a sufficient extent in every country and for all consumers. So accelerating the development of PPAs, especially for small, medium-sized consumers, is really important. If that can be done by guarantees or other forms of standardization, I think this is taking us in the right direction. And Alexander, you said you didn't want to kill the innovation on the CFD market. I would say that if you don't design CFDs in a smart way, you kill innovation. Because in terms of market integration, in terms of system friendliness, and you also take capacity out of the market, so the fragmentation, which Maria has highlighted. So I think I know that the time was at the essence, but I think it does make sense to take a closer look at how we want CFDs to be designed in order to be smart.
We have 2 questions, one from the online and one here in the room. Let me start because it fits well here from Julian Schock. He asked, how can the reform help energy and trade incentive industries to have access to competitive prices?
PPAs in the first place, absolutely. So this is what we are trying really to facilitate, access to PPAs for larger, but in particular for a smaller industrial consumers.
I think everybody agrees. The answer are PPAs, and member states should ensure that more PPAs can go ahead.
And of course, there's the broader picture. So in general, if we accelerate the decarbonization, if we have more renewables in our mix, then it should also lower the prices. And if we are becoming independent of gas, for example, coal prices.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me from here? Also online? Yeah, okay. Speak very loud. Yeah, okay, so that's right. Hans-Jörg von Köller, I'm the chair and ITV, and I'm very thankful that we are discussing the CFD and PPA issue today. I'm just a bit worried because we have had a discussion in Germany if there is a little bit of wishful thinking of it. I do not know really a system which is working in a combination with the market until now. Of course, there are attempts, I think, in Poland and in the UK with the CFD, but they were just focused on special subsidizing a scheme. They are not market integrated or SI. So I would be interested if you know a system which is fulfilling the criteria you have formulated in your proposal. I just want to hint on the motivations of those stakeholders in Germany. On one side, they want to be secured or insured against market risks and the price risks. This was the main motivation of the offshore industry, my observation. The industry was hoping to find a way to directly subsidize or to buy out the low prices and find a way to get rid of the problems in the grid and in those times where there is no power from offshore. This has to be subsidized or find another way from I don't know how. And from the state side, there was the wish to cut off the prices on the top. And these three reasons, they were all not on the focus of the integration or into one market, they were totally contradictory. And so I think that we'll not find a way or a solution as you proposed in your proposal, but maybe I'm totally wrong. It's really interesting that the motivations they have been discussing were totally contradictory, but in the end it was named CFD.
I mean, first of all, two CFDs, they function not only on energy markets. They are applicable to the entire market. So same as marginal pricing, it works for many commodities. And as I also said, that two CFDs are already used in Europe and also in the UK. In my previous experience, I actually worked on approving two CFDs, so the support schemes for Polish renewables. And actually, it has to fulfill a number of criteria. Like, for example, producers should not receive support in case of negative prices. So they should be really, there are many safeguards to ensure that this efficient dispatch is ensured and preserved. So it does function. I don't remember now all the 9 member states. I think it's also in these are used for sure in Spain, Italy, France, Poland, as I said, I think Hungary. I'm sorry, but I forgot the others. So, but it is in use. It is already applied, and it works well. And as I said, it proved very efficient during the crisis. Maybe now just to refer to what Bernd said before, that in Germany the one-way CFDs work well. But actually, when we saw extremely high prices, so the question is why, for example, onshore wind or solar producers should receive these extremely high revenues if the production costs are zero. So that's why we saw that it's actually justified for some technologies to cut their revenues. And this is de facto practical and maybe more nuanced application of our 1 to 2 regulation, prices regulation that we adopted last year, which actually at the time did not work well because of fragmentation of the market, because each member state applied its own solution, its own revenue cap. So this is actually a way, because in theory, if producers are competing for a certain revenue in an auction, competitive auction, then they should beat their costs. So this is yet another safeguard that that they will get the revenue they actually need. It's not excessive. It's not. It's just the right thing that they should do.
Okay. Anything else on TFTs, PPAs? That's not the case. Let's go also to look at the timeline to the flexibility. I think you all have mentioned it, and I think this issue always comes up when you are discussing the electricity market design, because we will have an increase in intermittent energy in the energy system that is also needed. But for that, we have to have backups that mainly is flexibility. And I want to put the emphasis here, because you also mentioned it, at least Maria and Bernd, the demand response. And Bernd rightly said, we have already a chapter in the clean energy package for all Europeans. But when you look what member states have done so far, only Luxembourg recently has adopted a system that one can call compliant with what is in the 2018 electricity directive. Here, my question is, you have done, as in the Commission proposal, some tweaks, especially also the access to the capacity mechanism. We come to that. All good, but to the Commission, I would ask. I mean, 2018, we are in 2023. I haven't seen any action from the Commission in order to insist that the chapter on demand response is properly implemented. If you take the French example, France has put the compensation, and that's already questionable whether compensation needs to be paid from the aggregator to the supplier at the spot market price. That's the end of demand response. So what is the Commission thinking about, first and foremost, enforce the implementation that of the 2018 proposal? And then the second question to Maria, because you also raised the importance, do you intend to go beyond what the Commission proposes on demand response?
Okay, so I will start and very quickly. So I think that there are two parallel avenues. So of course, on one hand, we need to ensure proper implementation of the clean energy package and all the provisions relating to demand response. So this is one way. One thing that we are doing currently and reviewing the implementation in member states, and on the basis of our assessment, we will take appropriate action. But at the same time, we see that the landscape has changed. That, for example, our RES ambitions are much higher now. So also the need for flexible solutions like the demand response, but also energy storage are much higher. That's why we also decided to increase our ambition in terms of supporting these solutions. So we see that with increasing share of renewables, there will be much more need for flexibility, and both on the such as storage, but also we need to incentivize consumers to be more active, and especially industrial consumers, but not only, also simple consumers. So we also see that, for example, a lot of metering devices is quite slow, and that's why we also propose some solutions to address that problem. And I don't know if Maria thinks that the proposal could be improved and strengthened, but happy to hear your views.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm convinced that the digitalization of the grid and the decentralization is the way forward. However, I'm also quite realistic, and I think that there are barriers to that if we have much ambition on the proposal, it will face the natural resistance to be applied, namely the investments on we need the grids, special distribution of grids, that we really need to have investment, and on the skills. And with the skills, a transformation needs the capacity of the consumer, capacity building of the consumers. We need to have much more engineers in the area, and we need to have much more technicians, middle level, in these areas to do a kind of revolution on that everyone is able to be empowered on the energy production, energy share. But I'm absolutely convinced that this is the way. But the situation on skills in this area in Europe is critical. We don't have enough skills. I don't know if it's everywhere the same situation. In my own country, in Portugal, you cannot find anyone if you have a problem in your apartment, only that this, you don't find anyone to go there and help you with the problem. So how we are going to do all this, plus the energy efficiency in buildings that requires a lot of transformation. So I'm a bit realistic, but I'm convinced that this is the way, and we should make sure that at least within the legislation, because legislation is something that stays with the open and flexible enough that allows this future to be implemented, and that the member states will go and the regions will go faster or slower, depending on these limiting factors, that they are very important limiting factors. And the Commission and member states and the society, in general, should do something about it, because we have problems in skills in the two areas that we are pushing, that is the digital and the energy. But I think that in energy is even more severe than the digital, because we have been talking a lot about digital, we need more digital, so there is already some awareness and people are learning, general population and the young people are starting thinking that is a good solution for their careers, but on the energy is still not like this. And this is the same or even more severe situation.
On digitalization, Sonia, I think especially the electricity TSOs have done a lot. And also my question to you is, are you unhappy that the Commission in its proposal has not, let's say, revised also the limitations for electricity TSOs to become owner of battery storage? Or is that now something that you have forgotten because you were fighting for that in 2018 like hell?
Well, you know, well, this is a long story, but also when you think about a sustainable design, like you started with Klaus-Dieter, I think the point is that's not a very sustainable argument to say we need to invest, TSOs need to invest in storage assets, because something has failed if that's happened. So let the market deliver on these flexibilities. That's what we would say. And if there is intervention, then agree what interventions are needed. So I think this was more of an interventionist argument, let's say. In terms of digitalization, of course, the grid needs to be much more digitally focused, digitally invested. It is becoming that way. It is in effect not a new thing. It's just a question now of how it can be used in a more flexible way, in an optimal way for the benefit of decarbonization. But if I could talk about flexibility also, because I think what's really important on that discussion is that all technology should be encouraged in flexibility. Because the concern that we have is that we put all our eggs in the basket of certain types of flexibility. And then we have the same argument in 5 or 10 years' time about whether that technology has the captive market or whether it actually cannot produce enough or whether, you know, some kind of constraint. So we propose a broad flexibility question to be assessed, and we all have the opportunity to be part of that discussion. And I guess the point is that some technologies which seem very obvious today actually may not be the ones for the future that we should have. So we need to be careful again about the sustainability question about flexibility. And so even the decision-making of the TSOs to invest or not invest in certain digital points is also a sustainability question. Am I investing just for today because it's easier and I get it on stream, or have I also to think about the future proofing of that? So we really do ask ourselves about that innovation question, in addition to saying I need flexibility. So, but we do welcome the focus on that, and we do welcome NSOE's role and the TSO's role to develop the needs assessment, but be open to seeing how that need is provided. That's what we say, you know, because I also take the point about, you know, skill sets. I mean, we all have iPhones now or smartphones, the things that we can do today that we couldn't do 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So on flexibility and on lots of things in the market right now in the energy system, it'll be us that'll do a lot of things. You know, we just have to skill up ourselves, you know, which seems a bit crazy. You think you need an expert for everything, but in fact, we all just need to become a lot more sophisticated in how energy is used. So thank you.
Good.
Yes, picking up on what Sonia just said, I think that the role of digitalization cannot be underestimated here. I think we really need capacities, as Maria said, or competences on both sides. We need digitalization to help us with decarbonization. And as I mentioned before, I think we really have a digital gap here. To take just one example from Germany, and I assume that in other countries might be the same. If you have a PV, if you have a PV on your rooftop and you want to change markets, you actually need to do that in paper form. And this is very contradicting in my view, since we know that we are we're coming to a system which is more and more volatile. At the same time, we need to synchronize this with demand, and therefore we need digitalization. However, we think we are at the very beginning at best. When it comes to flexibility and what the Commission is proposing in the market design overall, I think it's good that the Commission pointed out that we should integrate decentralized flexibilities and storage and capacity mechanism. I think that's one of the most promising provisions that I've seen on that part of the Commission proposal. I'm just curious with regard to the specific German situation here, just as a footnote, because Germany is preparing a power plant strategy which will focus on gas power plants. And I don't know if the Commission will consider this to be a capacity mechanism or not, but I think you should make sure that the Germans are also taking this into account, speaking of implementation. And the other bit, which could be stepped up in my view, is that the Commission is also suggesting indicative targets for member states for storage and flexibility. And we've seen how that played out with the clean energy package. So if we could add some dent to this, I think that would also be helpful.
Thank you very much. We are already after 2 o'clock, and I know Alexandra has to move. What I propose now is that we are closing this panel discussion, and we are moving to the lunch session. Let's use it for continuing the discussion also on the point that we did not raise in depth, and that's the capacity mechanism. Because my question to that was, you were all discussing the existing situation of capacity mechanisms. I would have been interested here, do we not need more than what we have today? And that means next to the energy only market, a real capacity market where you can also have the power plants in there that can be used as a capacity reserve, but at the same time, these power plants can, of course, also make money on the market as long as there's not double payment. But that's just something for the discussion. I would like to thank my panelists for a lot of ideas around the Commission proposal. What I mean, if I had to identify 3 issues that may be pursued in the future discussions within the European Parliament, the Council, maybe even the Commission, it is the question that Maria has mentioned first, and we have discussed. Is it not better, despite the fact I take the point that you have the state aid rules, but within the electricity directive to have the real safeguards that the design of the CFDs done by the member states is not going in the wrong direction. So the Europeanization of the safeguards, in my view, is the first point. The second point also is, should it not be more explicit that PPAs comes first? And CFDs are, as you have said, Alexandra, a last resort instrument. One could imagine also to put that into the proposal. And then the third one is the flexibility, storage, and demand response here are key. And Sonia has mentioned the need assessment that NSRI has to, I think it's a good thing, but I agree with Sonia. These assessments are worth very little as long as you do not have the actions behind it. It should be followed up by action programs, maybe to be developed by the member states and approved by the Commission or something like that. But there need to be a follow-up. If you remain with a simple assessment, experience shows is that very often nothing follows. With this, again, thank you very, very much indeed for your participation in this panel discussion. And please help yourself now to take some food, and then we can continue the discussions around the table. Thank you also very much for all participants online. You will now be freed, and I hope that you also find something to eat. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.